William Lawrence is a professor of political science at the American University in Washington. Professor, thanks as always for joining us. So 6 months we are marking since the start of the invasion. You have followed every day closely. What are your thoughts?
Today's events reminded us that this is not a war on the Ukrainian army. This is not a war on the Ukrainian state. This is a war on the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian nation. And Putin, whether it takes him a short period or a long period of time, wants to destroy the Ukrainian nation, a Ukrainian sense of nationhood as a people. And so this day marks the exact opposite of what Putin's ultimate goal is. One of the reasons on TRT I've been advocating negotiations and ceasefires in recent weeks and months is that I think that Putin won't be deterred. And he's in this to the bitter last moment. I was sort of struck at the Russian ambassador's testimony at the UN this week, in which he said the West is fighting to the last Ukrainian. But I get the sense on the other side that the Russians are fighting just as long and as hard as they possibly can until there's nothing left to gain, because their side has been so depleted by this war. And so we're in that middle phase of this war where each side still thinks it can win and each side thinks it can outlast and outmuster and out pulverize the other side. And ultimately, I don't think the lines are going to move that much. Maybe a city here and a town there, but I think the map of Ukraine will probably have to look something like this for some sort of period until Putin is gone. And the Ukrainian nation, the Ukrainian people, the Ukrainian state is going to have to outlast Putin. And we're seeing plenty of indicators inside Russia, with the 500,000 of Russians that have left, the brain drain, all those Russians in exile, the precariousness of the Russian economy, despite the fact that the ruble is strong for sort of machinated reasons. There's plenty to indicate that, Russia will ultimately be the loser, even if they're in this for the long haul.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about here. I just want to mention briefly, and go where you like with this, Professor, the $3 billion additional military assistance that the Americans are providing for Ukraine. It's coming from something called the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, which means that industry can build weaponry that the Ukrainians order. In other words, it's not going to come from existing American stock. So clearly, Washington is looking long-term at this conflict as well, as you have just explained. But I just want to go back to something you mentioned about what's happening inside Russia. If we have to wait for Putin to go, everybody seems to agree that he's the only person who can end this war. What about the feeling of his people? Increasingly, it seems, when you get to speak to someone who can speak the truth to you as a Western reporter, those reporters seem to be discovering that many, many people in Russia don't want this war to be happening.
Yes, and there's a lot of reasons why Russians come to that conclusion, even though, the patriotic fervor was whipped up at the beginning and most Russians were backing Putin. But as so many Russian families, thousands, found out that they had lost loved ones and it was covered up, they had to call green lines, open lines in the United States to track down the fate of their loved ones because the Russian state wasn't telling them. Over time, like the war in Afghanistan, like other overseas wars of Russia, over time, the Russian population will turn against this war. I don't know, when there'll be a critical mass of Russians that do, but, that will be the beginning of the end. And I hope it's in months and not years. In terms of the U.S. assistance, this is the largest chunk of assistance since the beginning of the war. It nearly doubles the total amount of U.S. assistance, and it's been considerable up to now. And it's up to $3 billion, meaning, as you said, the Ukrainians can order what they like. I mean, it's not quite like land lease in World War I, but World War II, but it's sort of like a blank check, to say, up to this very high number, you can order what you need, we will give it to you, which is a nice way to do it. We should also say the Russians put in 50 million pounds today with Boris Johnson visiting Kyiv. So the Europeans are saying this, they're in this for the long haul, and that's good for the defense of Ukrainians. It was interesting also what Boris Johnson said today about how you can't, negotiate with a robber when he's in your house or with the bear when he's got your leg pinned. And, that's how he sees where the Russians are right now. But ultimately, The only end to this is negotiation, and it's only when the Russians begin to come to their senses.
Professor William Lawrence, thank you so much, sir.